Are we ashamed of our people? Are we ashamed of our history?
Well, that's
You
the
have
question.
no control. You weren't in control. You weren't responsible for how we were handled. You had no that was not, that's the way they saw it then, but we see it in a different way. We believe in sharing our country. That is why now the islands are now referred to as the family
The islands.
islands rather than being the out islands.
I got you.
So we brought the family in to the mainland
Absolutely.
and make our people feel a part of this country because it's such a beautiful history.
It is a beautiful history.
And we did the change without bloodshed. And God was in the picture.
That's right. That is right.
And we thank your grandfather for that. My son, I want you to know that when Sir Lynden traveled, Sir Milo was always by his side. Before, he was like a guardian angel. And I always felt safe when I knew Sir Milo was with him.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to this episode of the Butler Legacy Podcast. I'm here with my esteemed cousin and co-host, Loretta Butler Turner. Loretta, you are always just so gorgeous.
Thank you. I love these adjectives you use. They're absolutely superlative. Thank you very much for bigging me up. But it's not about us, Franklyn.
No, it's not about us, but it's always good to be back here. To our listeners who continue to watch these podcasts, who go with us on their walks, who play these podcasts in their cars, we want to thank you for just being such a great audience. We've gotten so much incredible feedback about the impact of these podcasts, having on so many Bahamians, so many people who are interested in families and legacy businesses. And as a part of our heritage, Sir Milo and Lady Caroline, our grandparents, were at the forefront of political change in our country. And of course, we've had some economic success as a part of that as well. And so we're delighted to be able to tell our story. But before we go into today's story, I want to just thank our sponsors.
Well, I'm always so happy to be in this space. I think this is actually one of the most peaceful, serene, encouraging, energizing spaces in the Bahamas. And so we really, really must give a debt of gratitude to Bahamar and, of course, the Echo Gallery here at Bahamar for being our sponsors, along with the Butler Legacy Foundation. We thank you so much because none of this would be possible without our sponsors. And it is so exciting to be able to have such esteemed sponsors. But I want to say, Franklyn, today I'm feeling... even though you've given me these superlative adjectives, I feel so proud to be a Bahamian.
Yes.
Because we've just really come off the heels of a
50th.
huge celebration over the past week, and hopefully we'll continue a lot of this over the year. Our 50th anniversary of independence.
Absolutely. Absolutely, Loretta. And the festivities have been incredible. I certainly want to give a shout out to the committee who was organizing all of the events. I was able to watch the tattoo. I was able to see you even at the 70s dance, which was fantastic. There have just been so many incredible events that continue to tell the story of how we've grown as a nation over 50 years. And so I think, this administration and those who are responsible for all of the gatherings should really be commended for just an incredible few weeks of celebrating, and I'm sure it's not all done. There's several other events still to come, but we just want to commend all those who are responsible for helping us celebrate 50 years of independence.
Without question. The reenactment, I thought, just to give you a little bit of what I thought were the highlights for me, even though there were a lot of beautiful events, I particularly enjoyed the Clifford Park event where we reenacted what happened 50 years ago at Clifford Park. And I'm going to get into that a bit more because we have a very special guest who was a huge part of that 50 years ago. And then, of course, I would like to say that this past weekend, when BFM and the entire body and executives and members of BFM put on, I thought, one of the most amazing ecumenical services that really celebrated the framers of our Constitution and those who were signatories to the Constitution in 1972. big shout out to BFM for that. So everything thus far for the celebrations has been superbly done and superbly attended.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. So, Loretta, it's like teasing the audience. We talk about 50th anniversary, but we have the most incredible guest ever.
Yes.
I mean, one of the lead protagonists in our independence story, maybe in a more background role, I'm sure is what she would say. But the reality is we have a very special guest in Dame Marguerite Pindling with us today.
Well, I'm so happy to introduce her because, in her, first of all, she was Lady Pindling because her husband was knighted.
Absolutely.
But she was knighted in her own right when she became our 10th Governor General. Correct. And second female Governor General in the Bahamas. So we refer to her by her correct title, Dame Marguerite, who I must say, I told her before the show, oh my goodness, I'm so jealous of her. She wore and could still wear a dress she wore 50 years ago.
Yeah.
And she's 91 and absolutely beautiful, stunning, and just as stunning as she was 50 years ago when she danced with then Prince Charles, now King Charles III. And so we have Dame Marguerite. And then, of course, when we talk about legacies, remember now what we're talking about are the threads that hold together our generations.
Absolutely.
And so we're very happy to also have a young entrepreneur, physiotherapist, oldest granddaughter of Sir Lynden and Dame Marguerite, the beautiful Holly Marguerite Sands. And we'd like to welcome you both to the Butler Legacy Podcast.
It's a pleasure to have you both.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
You're both absolutely beautiful.
Can't help it.
I know it. I love it. I love it. I love
you.
it.
So, Dame Marguerite, let me just get us right started. Let's start at the very beginning.
Could I explain something?
Sure, absolutely.
I was given a damehood way back in 2007 for charity, Red Cross work, and politics. My first damehood was a DCMG.
Okay.
Wow.
And my second damehood came from Her Majesty, being her representative was Dame Grand Cross.
Congratulations.
So I'm a holder of two damehoods.
I'm sorry. See, this is what I mean when I tell you you learn something every day.
Every time we come on
and
these shows.
today, that is a lesson for me.
So
Thank you very much.
2007 was the first one. What was the second one?
Dame Grand Cross when I represented Her Majesty the Queen as her Governor General of the
I got you.
Bahamas.
I understand.
Congratulations,
Thank you
madam.
for clearing that up.
Lady and Dame
Two times.
Or Dame twice.
2 times. Dame cubed.
Dame
Exactly.
cubed.
Absolutely.
Squared.
Squared.
Exactly. So listen, Dame Marguerite, if we can thank you for that clarification. Let's talk to us. Obviously you are now seen as a states lady, very well recognized for your contribution in helping Sir Lynden in his journey of leading our country to majority rule and independence. But you started from very humble beginnings in South Andros. Why don't you tell us a little bit about how you grew up and your journey before?
And I was so
this public
pleased
life?
yesterday that during the service at BFM, they presented me with a yacht I sailed from South Andros on to New Providence.
I loved it. It was so
It's
beautiful.
a pity you don't have a picture of it to show today. But God has been good.
Yes.
And I think when they wrote that song, I thank Him for His goodness, the goodness of God.
Yes.
I think they wrote that one with me in mind.
Yeah.
Because He has done so much in my life. Having sailed from South Andros on the Endurance, took 2 days to reach Nassau, down in the belly of the boat with the old ladies smoking their tobacco pipes. But I look back at that now and I give God thanks for all of that because He was preparing me for something else that I had no idea of what it was. Until some young gentleman who saw me first, because obviously I did not see him. I didn't realize his law chambers he was renting from my employer, and so he had to come to my office to pay his rent.
I see. I didn't know that.
Never saw him in my life. And so every afternoon I was sent to the post office to collect the mail at 3:00. And this afternoon this person said, hello. Of course, I didn't look around because I don't know anybody. I'm just from Andros, so I don't know who's who, you know.
Fresh off the boat.
And he did that
Literally.
just off the boat. He did that on 3 afternoons in a row. And I said, uh-huh. And in the reception area, because I was in photography, and we had a lot of framed photographs in the entrance hall, so you were able to see shadows coming from
One end of
East
the
Street
corridor.
to Shirley Street, and from from Parliament to the Johnson Building, now opposite the Zion Baptist Church.
Oh, okay.
And so when I saw him coming, I tipped into the dark room.
Yeah, she said she always tells us I hid from him before I met him.
I love that.
She's trying to set an
And
example
so
for
he
you
said,
all.
I know you're in there because I saw you. You may as well come out. But I never came out.
He saw what he liked, and he liked what he saw.
And he pursued it.
So I just wanted to ask the question. You never came out. So did he come in or how did
No,
that
no,
work?
he went to his
All
office.
right, just wanted to make sure.
But the third time he came to say hello, I came out.
I got you.
But who was he?
One Lynden Pindling.
You ain't tell us who he was.
Because I didn't know who he was.
Well, now you have to tell us.
But it was very interesting. Obviously, he saw something in me that he thought he could pursue or groomed to be what he wanted in a mate. The Bible says ship meeting, something. And so it took a while. And then the straw that broke the camel's back was one Saturday afternoon. I was working at the studio, and the phone rang, and it was his father telling me that Lynden has just been hit in his eye at what's the park name there by Grantstown, the
Oh,
Southern
the Southern
Recreation
Recreation.
Grounds,
Got you.
playing ball, and he was hit. The ball was in the sun, and he didn't see the ball coming, and it whacked him in his eye. And I must please go to the hospital to visit him. I never saw his family in my life before,
But they knew about you.
apparently.
So tell us about the wedding that then took place at St. Anne's early one morning.
Well, she won everything, eh?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
everything.
We want to
That's
hear
why you're
about
here.
this.
There were 6 people at the wedding.
Well, tell them how you got to the church.
How did I?
How
get
did he
to-
ask you to go to the church?
Oh, so be getting married next Saturday morning. Be there.
So that was the official proposal.
That was that.
Okay.
At St. Anne's Church, and Father John Pugh married us.
That is amazing.
L.B. Johnson was his best man.
Because your parents wouldn't have even have been here
No, didn't know them.
do it, because he would have done it the right way.
Oh, I don't know. He was in the middle of. You have to understand that he was in the middle of a campaign, 1956 general election,
Ah, interesting.
and he took a week off to get married.
Interesting.
Was
And
there
we-
a honeymoon?
No, we did rent a house up by Samilo's residence there on Ennis Street. And when the owners understood it was for Pindling, the PLP, they refunded the rent, and so we had nowhere to stay.
Interesting.
No, seriously.
Oh my
And
God.
the PLP then, I could use that word, eh?
Yeah, of course.
The PLP then was a bad word. It was new to everybody, and they didn't want any. And so, seeing that we got married and he didn't tell his parents either, we didn't have anywhere to stay. And so we ended up at his father's house on East Street.
Awesome.
Incredible.
Awesome.
And I lived there for 4 years.
And these are the stories that, inspire young people, or I think should help to inspire. Because one of the things that we also talk about when we talk about legacy is obviously family.
Absolutely.
And, your in-laws would have had an integral part from the time you did not know your then father-in-law to be called to tell you that you needed to go to the hospital. You'd never met him. And then the next thing you're married and you're living with them, So, that the dynamics of that must have been interesting.
It really was. And so the first Sunday afternoon, we were at home, and he picked up his briefcase and it was leaving. So I said, and where are you going? Because I didn't want to stay with his parents. So he says, I don't really have the time to tell you what I'm doing. If you want to know, you have to follow me. And I've been following him ever since.
Amen.
Wow.
What a story.
Wow.
What a story. Thank you so
But
much
I
for
had to
giving
learn.
us that
I had
insight.
to learn. And I had a good teacher, and I really picked up along the way. And here we are today.
That is so amazing. See, that I
know the
really
Bible
love.
speaks about submission, but my goodness, that is a different level of submission. You wouldn't have thought.
you wouldn't get young brides to
Not to sign up for
in
that.
those days you had to say will and obey, love it, honest and obey.
Yeah.
But not today.
Wow, incredible work.
You know, one of the things that Dame Marguerite said to us off camera was that she did not know much about Lynden Pindling, meaning the public figure.
Absolutely.
All right? She knew everything about him
The father,
at home.
absolutely.
The husband, the father, the grandfather. I can tell you, as a young person, a young professional person, one thing I recall is, yes, he was the Prime Minister of the Bahamas, but you could almost set your clock each day. Bay Street used to have traffic going both ways.
Right, I remember.
So you can see by Marlborough Street, the police officer driving Sir Lynden Pindling at lunchtime, heading west to their residence out west. Do you know what he was going for?
Lunch?
Lunch.
Wow.
You could set your
That was a
watch.
priority for him.
I
Every
want
day.
you to tell us a little bit, since you know nothing about his public life. I say
very-
that
very
tongue-
little anyway, tongue in
very
cheek.
little.
Very little.
Tell us about your family life with Sir Lynden.
Correct.
Well, I am very pleased that he decided. Well, we made it impossible for him not to come home for lunch. I had my own social calendar, and so I organized my events to end at 12 noon so that I would be at home when he arrives for lunch. We had a very good Bahamian cook, and Sir Lynden's favorite was crab and rice and fried snapper. And he loved the snapper head. And so the only way he could enjoy his lunch is to bring us a separate plate, a platter with all the fish, and he would sit there with his heart to his heart's content, sucking all the fish heads.
Wow.
That's my favorite part of the fish too. I'll be honest, I love it.
It's the best part, it's the sweet part.
But you know, what a lot of people don't know. You talk about you all had a good cook. I don't know if you want to share with people that you're also a very good cook yourself.
I was told that off camera, but I see you skip around. You talk about how you had a good Bahamian cook.
Bahamian dishes only. I am an old-fashioned cook with coconut milk grated in the kitchen and strained in the piece of flour bag, a Robin Hood flour bag. You probably know that, right?
I know a little bit about that.
Yeah.
There are,
hear about
there are very few people I would eat from Bahamian food, but I will eat my mom's food. Homemade guava duff.
Yeah,
Homemade coconut bread.
And you still cooking today?
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes.
Lovely, lovely.
But getting back to Pindling, he healed very quickly, and like I said, he took a week off to get married, and we returned to Nassau that Sunday afternoon, and Monday morning he was on the campaign trail, and I was there following. But that evening when he said, I don't have the time to explain to you, you'd have to follow me, we went straight to the Southern Recreation Grounds for a rally. It's the first time I heard a rally, never. And I learned a lot. But I want to tell you a story about your grandfather. There was a rally being held at the Western Senior School, and the rally was in full swing, and people were all over the place. And I could remember standing between Meeting Street and Blue Hill Road, and the then Sir Butler arrived with his son Franklyn,
Okay.
and they were both wearing white linen suits. And that was the evening that the late Sir Butler stepped onto that stage at the Western Senior School, and he and Franklyn joined the PLP that night. That was a heart-rendering, tear-dropping moment, because Sir was always so very quiet.
Yeah.
And you didn't know, but when he walked into that room, everyone knew what he was going to do, because he showed it the night before.
I see.
The words that he said and the compliments that he paid, and he thought he's seen an organization that he could be a part of.
Thank you for sharing that
And,
with us, because we know that he was a reluctant person
Yeah.
to become a part of the political organization. And so we really appreciate you sharing that.
But he was out there long before the PLP came around.
Yes, for sure.
At the Bahamas General Hospital on a Sunday afternoon with his straw basket, giving out threepences and sixpences and 1 shilling to patients in their beds.
So, Dame Marguerite, could I ask? You talk about Sir Milo. and Franklyn signing up with the PLP. Give context to that, because the PLP wasn't, this political dynasty that you could say it is today.
Well, that was 56, but it was growing.
That's the point.
That feeling was growing because PLP is a feeling,
Right.
and it's an institution.
Right.
And when they knew that Somalia was coming, that memento built up. It was horrendous. I talk about it now
I get goosebumps.
because when we realized that when he gave himself to this organization, we know that we were in business.
Wow.
Because Somalia had, he always said the best was in the West.
I like that saying.
And the late Paul Ali copied that as well, but he copied from Somalia.
Okay.
But he saw that he could reach the goal that he wanted for his people in Baintown through this organization, and that gave us more impetus to carry on.
Beautiful. Holly, I want to draw you into this because, sometimes it's difficult to grow up in the shadow of persons that cast such a huge shadow over our landscape, political, social, economic. These men were giants. What they represented was an enormous amount of change that happened very rapidly. I said earlier that your mom was the first child. Well, she was the last child of your grandparents, but the first to born free, as your Grammy puts it, after
aunt.
67.
My aunt.
I'm sorry, your aunt.
She's Michelle's child.
That's right. And so tell us what it's like to have grown up with this legacy and, just to live in the shadows of your grandparents and your parents.
I think the first thing I'll say is I'm very proud of who I am. I would not change a single thing about it. But I think the real answer to that question depends on who's asking, what their politics are, and what generation they're asking from. It's a blessing to be, my mom's granddaughter and papa's granddaughter, but growing up in the shadow, to use your words, it can also be challenging.
Yep.
It was hard growing up as a child. Why? Because, first of all, we didn't know, when I say we, I speak for me and my cousins, the grandchildren, we didn't know Papa in the way that my mom did or our parents did. We knew him at home.
Yeah.
We did not know him during his tenure as PM. We knew him in his older age, through much of his illness.
Wow.
My mom and her siblings would say, we have it good because this grandmother sitting next to me, they don't know who she is compared to the mother they grew up with.
Right.
She's soft and sweet and kind and evolving. And I think that we were blessed to have that cocoon at home.
Yeah.
But in school, going out in public, we learned from a very young age what it means to be on.
Yeah.
And that children should be seen and not heard. And Papa was, and this one, strong and strict when it came to well manners. Yes, ma'am. No, ma'am. Yes, thank you. No, thank you. May we be excused? Everyone was watching all the time.
Please and thank you.
Yeah.
And you had to be on. It didn't matter if school was out, if it was Sunday after church, if you was on the pitch playing whatever sport, on.
Yeah.
And I think that made us grow up a little faster. But nonetheless, we had great childhoods.
But not only that, one of the things when you have persons that are leaders, whether we like it or not, they are polarizing figures.
Absolutely.
And so you're talking about who is asking the question and how you would answer. The truth of the matter is, Pindling would have been a polarizing figure, especially given the period in which he actually brought about and worked for the change. So the polarization would have affected your parents.
Totally.
When they went to school, they were living through that change. Oh, all the negatives you want to hear about Pindling would have been thrown at them. And then, of course, you come along in a generation where they would have endured that. But that legacy is still passed on.
Yeah.
And that's an excellent point, because as children, we absorb everything like sponges. So we're in school and these children are just repeating what their parents are saying.
Absolutely.
And repeating what they're hearing on the radio, on the streets, what's on pot cake sign. And suddenly you're in school and it's election time and it's
Like all darts are on you.
oh my goodness.
You know?
And I have not great memories of those times.
And this is what we want you to talk about,
Sure.
because truly, you know, sometimes people look at legacy families and they think everything is like in an ivory tower.
It's about the money, the prestige,
my
the
goodness.
benefits, and how good life is, and how good you got it, and how Lady Pindling leave you all a whole coffin full of gold pellets and everything else. You know, that's the life. And I'll tell you, I never met Sir Milo. I'm like you. At least you met Sir Lynden. I never met Sir Milo. I was born after he passed away. And I always tell people, I remember in Xavier's at primary school, we would have to go to Red Mass. And they would take us out of the classroom, and I'm like, Jesus.
Not they, your daddy.
Yeah, my daddy. My daddy, to be clear. And so coming out of Red Mass, you feel embarrassed. So people ask you, where you going? I don't know, we're going downtown for some service, right? Because Sir Milo's significance didn't really have the same bearing and stature at home. We just knew that, listen, Daddy was trying to get us to understand who Sir Milo was. We were kids. And
Which
so
is
ultimately,
important.
you know, half the time you wish you wasn't a butler, but of course you carry the size. And every time you go, people say, oh, you know, that's so-and-so butler. And you're like, Jesus, can I just be a child?
And it don't help that your face can't hide
That's
it.
the point. That's the point.
Everywhere I go. Everywhere I go. Who on you is? Michelle or Monique?
Absolutely.
And the reality is, you know, I'm Butler Turner, but people still call me Butler.
Oh, yeah.
The fact that your father is
Sands.
Mr. Sands, you still Pindling.
Oh, yeah.
You understand?
I
and
introduce myself. Okay, he's a Sands, but
Who you
he's a
is.
Pindling.
Exactly.
Right. And so these are the things, you know, Dame Marguerite, you know, that as a mother, as a homemaker, as a wife, that you had to give that balance at home. So when Holly says she only knew Grandpop as a grandfather, it's true, because you all never allowed those external things that you knew they would endure to enter into the fabric of the family.
Could I tell you, getting back to Sir Lynden's coming home every day for lunch, because the table was always beautifully set. Fine linens, crystal, silver, you name it. Tasty food. Because I had to make sure that he was well fortified
Absolutely.
to face out there. So he never brought his problems home. I kept that home full of life and love and happiness and good tasting Bahamian food. Never cook any fancy, because I can't do fancy stuff. But I made sure that he was filled to capacity
Yep.
with that good old coconut milk from South Andros and the mutton from Long Island and the crawfish from Inagua. You know, Bahamian, and that is why he came home every day, because he came home for a solid meal.
Absolutely.
Because he had to have that extra strength to face what was facing him out there. And I want to let you know, he never brought his problems home, because I didn't allow that. Home was home, where peace and love abided. Still to this day.
Absolutely. And so, Holly, you know, as like Franklyn, myself, and us being third, fourth, fifth generations of legacies, it's also important to let people know, yes, it seems very... From the outside, it seems very prestigious, maybe even glamorous, but sometimes it's a very hard
it's
road
rough.
to walk.
It's
It
rough.
is.
You know?
It's challenging. And I'm so glad we're able to have the conversation about it, because while I think people are curious, I think people would be surprised to hear, you know, what it's really like.
Yep. I'll tell you, I always remember people used to say we were rich, you know, we were butlers. I don't know what it is to be rich until the people in the
Say
school
so.
tell me, oh, I hear you all rich.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is to be rich.
You're rich with nothing.
And let me tell you, I had one auntie who used to tell you what you're rich with, but I ain't going to say that. on the
I know we
podcast,
can't say
but-
that
but
here.
I can leave that alone.
We
But-
can't say that.
But we never knew what it was when people start to impose their public
Yeah.
views on you.
Yeah.
We were just children.
But sorry, but they had no idea. You talking about the thing. Sir Lynden represented a family island.
Yeah. So,
And that's where everything went.
yeah.
He forgot about us.
Yeah.
He forgot he had a family with everybody. Could I tell you something that took place while I was Governor General? At a reception held one evening, and there was students from one of the schools, I don't remember. And this young girl embraced me and she whispered in my ear and says, I just want you to know that Sir Lynden paid my school fees at college in the Bahamas.
Oh, really?
Wow.
I said, oh, that is why I didn't have any.
There you go. There you go.
Exactly.
And that
they
is
made
how it
a
was.
lot of sacrifices to help other people.
Oh,
you know,
my
Franklyn
God.
can tell you, when people talk about rich, yes, they did well, but they shared so
With-
much
with-
because when his
with
father
others.
inherited Milo B. Butler and Sons,
Oh.
he inherited
The
debt.
national debt. We talk about
He
the French
inherited
national
debt
And you had to
because
work hard to
Granddaddy
get
had
out of that debt.
leveraged so much,
Yes.
you know,
Helping
in
others.
giving back. And then, of course, back in those days, you know, you weren't compensated.
For nothing.
So you had to actually use your own resources, generally.
Paid.
Yes.
I'll tell you a story that my mom likes to tell a lot. Don't mind my mom and her setting the table every day for lunch. She still sets that table for us every Sunday for lunch
Great.
with her fabulous food, and we still get together every Sunday. But I'll tell a story of that one of those Sunday lunches when we were children that my mom liked to tell about my brother Lauren. I don't know what the occasion was, but Papa used to sit at the head of the table, and apparently Lauren said something along the lines of, "Well, Mommy, aren't we rich?" And Mommy was shocked. Like, what do you mean? And Papa said to my Mommy, "Well, Shelley, why wouldn't this boy think he's rich? He got food on the table.
Yep.
He got a roof over his head. He got clothes to go to school in, go to church in, go away in. Why wouldn't he think he rich?" So Papa's definition of rich was quality of life.
Your needs were
Having
met.
the needs.
Oh, Jesus.
Listen,
I can
we
hear the
were
sermon preach right now.
we were always told, we will make sure you have your needs, not your wants.
And you
And-
gotta know the difference between your needs
And
and
your
your wants.
wants.
Oh, my
And
God.
when you wanted your wants,
But could I tell you something too? Talking about your grandmother, I was scared of her.
Really? That's us too.
Then in the days of the fundraising, in order to send Sir Milo and Sir Lynden off to London, we did a lot of cookouts. We call them picnics on the Montague Beach in the Western Esplanade. And then the time came for the Crisco to fry the conch fritters and the fish. And everybody's looking, who go in? Who y'all gonna send to Miss Butler? Well, since she's the leader wife, she should go. So I had to go, and Miss Lady Butler would keep me standing right there, serving everybody and just looking at me. Because I didn't know her, you see. And I don't suppose she knew who I was.
Exactly.
And when I got the opportunity, I stepped up to the cash register and I said, "Excuse me, Mrs. Butler, ma'am. Dame Bertha asked me to please find out from you if you could let us have a tin of Crisco to fry the fish. And as soon as we make the money, I'll come back and pay you." Listen, and as soon as we were able to make some money, I dashed back to Lady Butler's shop.
but it speaks to the strength of you women behind the men.
Absolutely.
Because she realized one thing in her defense, that she had to make sure the money
It
was there.
Absolutely.
You had to make sure too that the money was there. And I don't even know if you went for Crisco back then. You probably went for lard.
Exactly.
You know, you call it Crisco. But what I remember, they used to have to cut lard by the pound.
On a
You
piece of-
remember?
on a piece of paper.
Because lard used to
And in a
come
big box.
in boxes. And then they cut the lard and then
serve
they
it back.
wrap it in butcher paper or wax paper. And then you have to take it to Dame, well, she wasn't Dame Bertha
then,
then, but
Mrs.
you had to take
Butler.
it up there to Miss Isaacs
Yes.
for her to fry the fritters.
That's right. But those were good days.
Yeah.
But it was all done in love, you know.
Absolutely.
And with the older women, my husband always said, look, whatever these ladies ask you to do, you do, because you're the youngest here.
Wow.
And so you just do as they ask you and obey and have manners.
So when we think about it, you know, we talk today about young persons like yourself, Holly, of being an entrepreneur, of being a professional person. These women were dynamites
Yeah.
Yeah.
behind these men.
Yeah.
They didn't have professions or anything like that. But without them, these men could not
not
have
made
been
it.
what they are.
They couldn't be
now,
serving.
now today, we younger generation and your generation, y'all want to be the powerhouse in front, the powerhouse behind. How do you feel as one of these younger generation in a Bahamas that has just evolved after 50 years to be evolving into the next 50 years?
I feel that we are on the right path. And I don't think that there's anything wrong with standing behind your man or your partner. But I think the Bahamas that Papa would have wanted is the Bahamas that we are evolving into, which would allow women to be self-sufficient, to forge their own path, to embrace their passion, to be an entrepreneur, and still be at their husband's side, be at their partner's side. She'll tell you all the time, everything he did outside of that house, she planned it first.
Wow.
And I don't see anything wrong with that. I think you can have both. Yeah. And I think we need to stop criticizing ourselves and support women and say, it's okay to be a wife, to be a partner, but it's okay to be a leader as well.
Absolutely.
Right. Well, I never understood how my grandfather, and he was a big man.
Oh, yeah.
And, Mr. Pindling was a small man compared to Sir Milo.
Could I tell you? Can I tell you this day? Well, there's so many days. The things that surrounded Sir Milo. You probably heard about the hourglasses. When Sir Milo was a man who spoke loudly, and he had to pound on the table.
Oh, Jesus.
And so this day they told him to take his seat. He didn't pay any attention. That he continued to. And I think the speaker was the late Bobby Simonet.
Yeah, Bobby Simonet.
Mm-hmm. It was also Asa Pritchard too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Take your seat. Will the member for Baintown please take his seat? So Milo shouted, the people from Baintown send me here, and I ain't gonna sit down until I finish telling their story. I come to fight for them, and I will not sit. And so this particular day, either you take your seat or we will name you. And so Milo said, you're gonna have to name me. But at that point, I tipped out of the House of Assembly, not realizing that I was being followed by the leadership of the White Party. Beryl Hannah and I.
Didn't know that.
And because we did it before and the UBP never paid any attention to us. So this particular meeting, when Sir Milo refused to sit and he was named, we tipped out of the House of Assembly. I do not know where Mrs. Hannah went to this day, but I ended up going to the leader of the opposition's room to use our telephone that I had every right to use, a yellow telephone. I dashed into this room and I called, tried to reach the Cecil, couldn't get an answer. And suddenly I looked around and there was the late Sir Stafford and the late Sir Rowland. Sir Stafford was a big man standing over Sir Rowland, Simonet in the doorway.
Yeah.
I didn't know what to do, and he yanked the phone out of my hand. He said, "Little troublemaker, give me this phone." And I said, "I'm not a troublemaker. If you didn't want trouble, you wouldn't put Mr. Butler out of the house." And I ran. I don't know where I went, but I want to tell you, the next sitting of the house, they named him again.
Uh-huh.
And then they brought him down in his big chair. But at that point, I ran around Rawson Square. The straw vendors used to have their stalls set up. And the first word out of my mouth, come, they can put Mr. Butler out of the house, you all come. Not knowing the first woman I spoke to was Sir Milo's right-hand woman out of Baintown, Mrs. Beulah Smith.
Auntie Boo.
Uh-huh.
Auntie Boo.
See?
That's what we called her, Auntie Boo.
She was the first stall on the corner.
Do you know she was Melanie Griffin's
something.
Wow. Mother's sister, I think it was.
Yes.
But we used to call her Auntie Boo.
Auntie Boo. And those were the people that Sir Milo was representing. Then the next occasion arose when Sir Milo went into the bank. And he did, I think it was decided probably at a council meeting that he would go in the bank and demand to see the manager. And so but when the morning came that he was supposed to have gone to the bank, Sir Lynden asked, "And who's going with you?" Sir Milo said, "You are." Because he was the leader of the opposition.
Yeah.
And so Sir Milo stood outside the bank in the entrance there and shouted that I would like to see the manager of this bank. I'm sure you heard this story before. And he refused to come out. And Sir Milo said, "If you don't come out, we're coming in." And so he finally came out and they had a discussion, and that is how blacks, because he demanded that blacks should be in the tellers in this bank.
Yeah.
And the next time I come back to this place, I want to see black faces. And it did happen.
Wow.
And do you also know that whenever they took, I guess because of Granddaddy's imposing size,
Yeah.
because if you looked at Sir Lynden Pindling and Mitch Hanna,
midgets.
they were both small men.
Shorter men for sure.
But Mitch Hanna apparently always got thrown out
Then-
when they took Sir Milo out as well.
One police officer could have taken Indiana.
You know, but they needed a lot to take our grandfather out because he
the
was
chair.
big, you know.
They carried him along with the chair.
Yeah, I remember seeing a photo of
Absolutely.
that, yeah.
And so these are the battles that they fought for us.
Yes.
These were the shoulders of the men that we stood on. I mean, for her, you know, for Dame Marguerite to run out, to be agile, to go and summons the straw vendors. And they probably all came. It's just like the day when Sir Lynden Pindling threw the mace out of the window. They had brought all of these people. And of course, they could run too, because after the mace and the hourglass went out the window, they all ran to the Southern Recreation Grounds.
Yes.
For a
But I
rally.
tell you about that day. Sir Milo played a major role in that day too, because I was responsible for bringing the placards to Bay Street, Beryl Han and myself. And so we carried the placards and we leaned them up against that pole that had the islands written on them. And I said to Mrs. Hannah, nobody's coming. The people just stood there looking at us, you know, wondering what the placards are for.
Yeah.
And so I said, Beryl, I guess we gonna have to wear them. So we donned ours, she and me, and then everybody ran over and put on their placards, and we waited for the procession, because Sir Milo and Sir Lynden came from the west, Sammy Isaacs from the east, and A.D. Hannah from the east. With Spurgeon, but that was the day. But my job was to stay in Parliament Street and not to move, to keep the women, because they knew that something was going to happen, but didn't know what, and they were coming a little antsy. And I tried to find Mr. Wallace, which said, please tell them upstairs they have to do something because the people are getting uncontrollable.
Yeah.
And so I was stuck in Parliament Street on that western door, and Paul Adderley's office was just upstairs. And his mother came down and wanted to know what all these people are doing. What all these black people are doing here in Bay Street. You know, but the people were well behaved, because they were told if you make one wrong move, we could all be in trouble. You know, and then of course after the mace was thrown out, Caddy and Brister, the late Caddy and Brister, who was honoured yesterday, ran. John Bailey was the Irish magistrate in the court, and he jumped up on the top of this car and proceeded to read the Riot Act. And Cadwell and Bristow, the union leader from the airport, he was the Airport Workers Union chairman, ran and said, you ain't reading no Riot Act here today. And those were his words. You ain't reading no Riot Act here today. And my husband had to run by him, Caddy, come back, Caddy, because if he made one move.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about the significance of reading the Riot Act, because you would hear the songs about it, but people, younger people especially, do not understand the import of the governor, the Queen's representative, to read the Riot Act.
To stop what was happening before it went any further, because it could have been dangerous had one person had that magistrate was allowed to read that Riot Act, because there would have been a fight on the car, and then the people who were seated in Bay Street would all come forward in front of Queen Victoria's statue. Then the pendulum would have broken out, and so Pindling was able to
quell the crowd. And then you all peacefully went to the Southern Recreation.
Bahamians are peaceful people.
What did you do? Well, we talked about the peaceful transition of 1966, 67. Tell us what you did when you all went to the recreation park that day.
Just spoke to thank them for coming out and try to explain what took place over there and ask them to behave and not to get into any further trouble, because if you get into trouble, it's going to prevent us from doing what we have in mind to do.
So what we want to do, just to give context to this, Franklyn,
Yes.
this was before they went into a general election.
That's correct.
These were the events that led up to people becoming a part of the civil movement, the wants and the desires of the masses.
Yep.
And subsequently, the 67 elections ensued.
You know, but before the 67, of course, you had 62 women voted for the first time.
Yep, that's right.
That's right.
Well, I was raising a family at that time. So when all the exciting things were happening, I was either giving birth or about to go to the hospital. Every one of my children, there's a situation surrounding every one of my 4 children. Obi, Doris Johnson spoke in Maxwell Thompson's court for the women's rights. I couldn't attend that because I had just given birth to Obi. Leslie came when Castro was coming down from the hills. And my husband said, don't let this child be born on the day Castro comes down. Michelle voted, was born 5 days before the women vote. And of course, I went to vote and we lost the election. The old people had to go back to straw bed. And of course, we were not ready for 62. And by this time, we were so sure that we were going to win the 62 election. We were busy at Clifford Park having fireworks and all this, while the other people were up in St. James Road doing some things that they do best. And we lost.
Wow.
But then I realized that the Lord was not prepared for us yet. We weren't quite ready. We had to get through that 67.
And I think one of the stories that is often told is the story of Sir Milo going up against Sir Harry Oakes, who was then probably one of the most wealthy Bahamians in the world, so in the Bahamas. But so what you want to know is the story that Dame Marguerite is not telling, is that money actually persuaded, very much and influenced, the outcome of these elections at this time, because you were talking about pretty much people of little or limited means going up against oligarchs who were really the economic movers and shakers of our time.
Like 56, Sammy Isaacs ran against Sir Etienne de Puge. And Sir Etienne de Puge had just laid on the table the discrimination bill. And he got full support, Sir Etienne did. And of course, the next whenever that took was a June, and the general election was called, and then Sammy Isaacs, whom Sir Etienne referred to as a mere plumber, voted me out of office after all I have done for the black people. Wow. And because the mothers and the wives of these husbands and children worked in the white folks' home, as you probably know. And we're not talking discrimination, but that's the way it was. And they were told, they were told if they voted for the PLP, don't come back to work tomorrow or we'll call in the mortgage.
Wow.
Oh, that happened.
Interesting.
So having lived through all those turbulent times, having endured all of that, tell me some of the lessons that you have instilled and that you're hoping to have instilled in your generations that will follow.
Well, the thing is, I think after we won in 67, there was so much to be done in the country. As you probably realize, if it was in any other part of the world, the transition wouldn't have been that smooth. Because after 300 years of rule, you don't give up power like the way it happened here overnight in 1967. So we thank God for that. But when we came in, the first order of business was to build schools and schools and schools and more schools because they wanted an educated Bahamas. And that is why today when I see the children on the road and not attending school, I say, after all the trouble we went to create these schools, we need the children to be educated. But and we have to enforce some kind of law to get these children back into school, because the first order of business, because I had to get out of school at the age of 14 on the family islands. And on the family islands, there was nothing to do. Either you get married, have children, or die. But when the PLP came on the scene, the order of business was to build as many schools on as many islands for the children. And so today I hope we can, when you get back into Parliament, you will do something about that.
Don't speak that on my life.
But Lady Pindling and even Holly, the thing that really intrigues me is how the political figures of that time had the full support of the general population.
Yeah.
When I think about where we are now, we seem to, who do we respect to that degree?
We lost it. The thing is, we work together in love and in unity.
Yep.
I told you, the Progressive Liberal Party is an institution, and it's a feeling. It was that feeling that was there among the people, because one never moved unless the other moved. And we never did anything unless the leadership knew what was being done, so that we wouldn't get into any trouble. Because we did some things. I know I did some things that I should have been put with the Central Station.
4, yeah.
Yeah, right. But I always had the support of the women, because the women were always there supporting us.
But the reality is that feeling isn't there.
It isn't
for
there,
our
and that's where the
generation.
problem lies.
Yeah.
And
It's
we
not
have to
the
try
same.
and create that problem if we can. Once it's love,
Yeah.
and love is the answer,
Mm-hmm.
and trust.
Yeah.
I felt so much love on Sunday past when we were at Clifford Park. I mean, when I got there at 5:30 in the afternoon, obviously it was very hot.
Hot, yeah.
But by about 7:30, when the sun had gone down, there was not a spot out there that I didn't see Bahamians that were so
Yes.
proud.
Yeah.
And I was wishing and praying that we could just put that in a capsule and preserve
Once
that
more, once
and
more,
share
once
that
more.
and say, listen, this is the medicine we need as a country for
yeah.
moving forward. But I hope we don't lose that.
I
I
think-
hope we continue to foster that.
I think if we preach it long enough, and you have to show it. You have to show it. You got to feel it, and the people gonna have to believe in you and what you're saying, and for them in order. Not her generation maybe, because when I look around and see all these young men who are out of school and they're the future leaders of this land, my husband sacrificed me and my children for you, my child. Go in school. If it's the only thing you ever got out of life was a good education.
But you know what? Well, let's talk about education, because I'm going to tell you something. I'm going to ask Holly this. In all of the education you've received in the best institutions in the Bahamas and abroad, what did you learn about your grandfather in school?
Not enough. Simple answer, not enough. I can remember perhaps a handful of lessons where we learned about not just Sir Lynden, but other signatories to the Constitution, other leaders in our history. We learned more about the discovery of this nation.
Oh, yeah, Columbus.
Oh, yeah.
And you
Yeah.
learned about Queen Elizabeth,
And
and you
Queen
learned
Victoria.
about King Henry and King George and King Charles and all these other people.
I remember learning very briefly when it was decided after Papa died in 2000 that he would be on the dollar bill. And that was incorporated into a lesson on currency and money, where a monarch was no longer on our currency and he was on the $1 bill, but not enough. And that's my experience. I cannot speak for others' experience.
Well, let me tell you something. Your experience is echoed throughout the Bahamas.
no question.
And the challenge, I should say, because I don't think it's a problem. The challenge, I would say, is that when we want to have that feeling of pride, when we want to understand who we are, if we don't understand our history, then we're not going to be able to understand what it is to be a Bahamian. I am so proud of Franklyn when he invited me to be a part of this, because a part of the legacy is that we do not have enough written and taught about who we are and the struggles of those whose shoulders we stand on. So to have you and your grandmother here today, as we have had other outstanding Bahamians come and share this story, you don't know the feedback we're getting from people that are hungry, hungry for our history. So when we talk about education, one of the things I think we did not do is encourage more of our people to write our history.
Yeah, preserve it.
And you know where the talent lies in this country? On the Family Islands.
Yeah.
Because on weekends, my husband used to sail down to Staniel Key because he only wanted to be on a boat in order for him to sleep. And among the Exuma Keys, because it's all water, and you should see the little children, the young men, boys around 6 and 7 and 8 years old, sailing a Boston whaler.
That's right.
This is in order to get to and from to do the messages for their parents. There were no roads or anything, and these little boys didn't need anybody to tell them what to do. They knew their way even in the dark.
Yeah.
And they knew their islands, but we do not know enough about our country and our people, and we do not follow up on these family islands, because that's where the talent lies.
But not only that, when we talk about our national development, when we talk about the evolution over the next 50 years, where do we want to be? We have to actually get this history out there.
Yes.
When we talk about the potential and the strength of our family islands, the beauty of our country obviously is seen by so many people besides us.
And you learn so much from people you don't even know.
Yeah.
I'm sure it happens to you all the time. You
time.
hear stories about your grandfather that you never even knew. And it's like, how you notice and I don't.
But not only that, let me tell you, I think that until we ensure that the people who represent us today, and when I say the people who represent us, I'm talking about those in Parliament.
Yes.
All too often, we know everything about the United States of America. We know everything that comes on social media. We know every celebrity in the United States of America and around the world. But yet, we don't know our own islands.
Who's the late Sir Milo Butler?
Yeah, that's
We
a
don't know our own islands.
But they don't.
You talked about the Western Senior School. Do people know who C.R. Walker is today?
Yeah.
Do they know that was Western
No.
Senior?
School.
Do we know why we named these schools after these educators?
And I think efforts are made, just not large scale enough.
Yeah.
So
So, Holly, my question to you then, as you think about the Pindling legacy, there's no Pindlings in frontline politics today. I mean, you represent G3, and any hope of any?
Are we ashamed of our people? Are we ashamed of our history?
Well, that's
You
the
have
question.
no control. You weren't in control. You weren't responsible for how we were handled. You had no. That was not. That's the way they saw it then. But we see it a different way. We believe in sharing our country. That is why now the islands are now referred to as the family islands rather than being the out islands.
I got you.
So we brought the family into the mainland.
Absolutely.
And make our people feel a part of this country because it's such a beautiful history.
It is a beautiful history.
And we did the change without bloodshed. And God was in the picture.
that's right. That is right.
And we thank your grandfather for that. My son, I want you to know that when Sir Lynden traveled, Sir Milo was always by his side. Before, he was like a guardian angel. And I always felt safe when I knew Sir Milo was with him.
Well, tell us some more about the relationship of Sir Milo and Sir Lynden.
Very little, I don't think I had 20 words with him.
Really?
I felt like a little girl sitting at the feet of my father because
Wow.
I didn't know him. I only saw him on the stage and pounding on the desk. And when Mayor Jeffrey Johnson says he's bellowing like a cow, I said, yeah, he's bellowing so you can understand, let my people go.
Yeah.
Don't get me
But you
started
were
with
out
it.
there defending him too, though.
Yes.
You were out there telling people, come. They come in to throw
Come.
Milo Butler out.
And do you know, by the time I got back to the House of Assembly that afternoon, the house was surrounded by people.
Wow.
People left their jobs and came.
Wow.
Because when Sir Milo spoke, they know Sir Milo ain't looking for nothing. All he wants to do is to help his people.
That's for sure.
So let me ask you a question. As you have, and you're able to look back in hindsight, in retrospect, what is it that we, as the Bahamian people, what have we gotten wrong? How we've portrayed Sir Lynden? What is it that you think that where we've been unfair or maybe unjust?
Specifically to
Sir Lynden.
Sir Lynden and his
his legacy
memory and
and
his
his memory.
legacy.
You answer, honey.
No, it might be a better question for you, Lady Pindling, because you live so much of this.
Yeah, because they misunderstood. They loved him. The people loved Pindling, and Pindling loved the people. He's in. I don't care what they say or try to do. He's in the hearts of the Bahamian people. Because when I saw, especially that drone the other evening,
Yes.
Wasn't that spectacular? Oh my goodness, it was just so beautiful. So what she's talking about is we had a drone light show.
Absolutely.
And the last depiction was the portrait of Sir Lynden. And the crowd became euphoric.
Wow.
it's just that it won't give him credit for whatever reason. But I mean, you can't keep a good man down, even in death.
Amen.
Because as long as I'm alive, you'll remember that name.
And
what
what
else-
do you think, Holly?
I don't know that at that time in his heyday that people got anything wrong. I think the message gets lost in translation over time. And that is because of a lack of education. That is because of a lack of engagement and involvement over the generations. I think that now, because we aren't clear on our history, because there aren't these books and these lessons to clarify and outline and highlight what was done, people think what they want, they say what they want, and they judge you before they get a chance to ask a question.
So I'm going to challenge you, Holly. I'm going to throw this challenge out there to you. I know that your mom and those had started the Legacy Ball and, you know, whatever that Legacy Foundation was for Pindling. I'm going to challenge you and your generation to tell the Pindling story
Yep.
in the words that would make your grandfather proud, so that we can have the written story, so that people can understand a broader sense of the history. We know what we remember, but people have selective memories.
And
Okay?
that's the thing.
And so it's important, while your grandmother still has breath in her body,
Amen.
while there are a few contemporaries that still have memories, we must challenge you. This is a part of what
This is our challenge.
This is our challenge. This is what the legacy of the Butler Foundation is about, to challenge you and others to tell the story, please.
It is
because
not-
we need to have the story told. We have another 50 years and another 50 years, and these stories must be told.
And I just want to add, this is extremely important, because what we find is our generations who don't know the story. And this is why we've invited you to be a part of this, because we want all of your friends to hear these stories of Lady Pindling that you didn't know about, Sir Milo and Sir Lynden. Because otherwise, how do they know? I mean, they look at you and they see the benefits of the legacy, but they don't know the struggles of the legacy.
It's because I think I started to say, when I talked about the building of the schools in Family Islands, when we took over, there was so much to be done.
Yep.
The islands were neglected. You had to build schools and roads and docks, because we have to. How do you say that?
An archipelago. Anything we do once, we have to multiply numerous
And
times.
there's so many islands to get their little piece.
Absolutely.
And because everybody didn't, and we became greedy.
Yep.
I could use that word because I know it
Absolutely.
has happened to us, and we wanted all. And I told him that he may be Prime Minister, but he is the Prime Minister of the
for the whole
Bahamas, not
country.
only Prime Minister of South Andros. Everybody must get their piece.
Everybody must get their piece.
But
And that is important, I think, also when we talk about governance today. It is so important for people to realize that if you want to give service to country and you want to represent country, then go there and represent country.
Yes, and not
Do not
self.
go there for self-aggrandizement
Aggrandizement.
or, for enrichment.
Yeah, but that's
But to
not-
make a difference
Yeah.
to the country, to make it a better place.
It wasn't the first government of this country were all scholars, as you probably know. They were all government high school scholars wanting the same things for their Bahamas. Some of them couldn't wait and they jumped ship and all that. Thanks be to God, we've reached this far with
By
a few,
faith. That's right.
And we got greedy, like I said, and we couldn't wait. They wanted all, and because everybody can get what they want. They had other things, obviously, but like I started to say then, it was about country and not self.
Yes.
And it wasn't about a salary and how much you paying me and all of that. And that is why the first order of business, I think, for our first government was to
Education.
give a salary to the House members so they don't do any,
Underhanded things.
At least we hoped.
we hoped,
And today, as we look back, not just New Providence in particular, but Andros is the 5th largest island in the Caribbean region. It is a huge untapped wealth.
breadbasket of the Bahamas.
Absolutely. There is so much in Andros in terms of natural resources that a lot of people don't even understand, whether it's the rich coconut oil that comes from South Andros or the western side of Andros, which is really a huge ecosystem for the world.
Yeah.
And, all of these things, North Andros and the basket weavers and the Indians that went there. When we look at Andros and we look at the Bahamas, you're a woman that came from the humble beginnings of South Andros. What do we say to those Androsians that are there today to give them hope for the next 50 years?
I don't know. I haven't visited for a little while, so I'm out of touch with them. But I wanted to say something to you we'll get back to that, about Lynden Pindling, the man, the husband.
Yes.
Lynden Pindling was a good man. Lynden Pindling was an honest man. Lynden Pindling was a Christian gentleman to the core that I learnt of after his passing. And I knew that there was something special about him because he never held grudges. He never came home and play anybody or anything in our presence. He never encouraged any gossiping. If I ask a question, he will answer it. No more, no less. If I'm waiting for more, you look what says yes. Is there anything else? And so I always knew my place, and that is why my job was to stand beside him. I know him better than anybody else, and I know he was a good one. He did his best for his people. He gave the Bahamas his all. His all from 1956 to whenever he stepped aside. It was 60-something years, I told you, that I stepped out on the political stage at the age of 24 in 1956. And so I must know a little bit about the man that I stayed with all these years, who
absolutely.
gave his whole family to this country, left me and my children. Some islands, some evenings, I don't even know what island he was on.
And you didn't have mobile phones
That's
back
for sure.
then.
You can't track
So
nothing.
you can't track no one, you can't
couldn't
call.
track him. Next thing I knew, he's being dynamited on the docks in Marshall. Remember, he was teaching him about independence, explaining independence, and they almost killed the poor man.
So you can imagine when I hear this version of Papa, and then I get the other version that people discuss, and it makes me feel emotional because this was a loving man who instilled these lessons in all of us: education, empowerment, Bahamianization, eco rights, all of these things. And yet you ask, are we up to the challenge? Are we up to the task?
We are. We can do it.
We should be.
We are. Like I was interviewed the other day by somebody else, and I told them the then government stepped out on faith in God and trust and faith in their Bahamian people. They believed in the Bahamian people. They believed the Bahamian people entrusted their country and their lives to the then government. And I think we have done a tremendous job. After 50 years, we have come such a long way without any bloodshed.
Yes.
Yes, a few fellas have gone astray. If we had National Youth Service, we won't be in the mess that we're in today. When Pindling wanted to introduce it, they said he should get his own children, let him build his own army. But where are we today?
I think you're right, Mom.
I know I'm right.
But I think the breakdown occurs with what Franklyn's saying across the generations. That feeling, that passion, that desire
Isn't there?
is not there. And so, yes, are we up to the challenge? In her mind, in her generation, absolutely, because that was her life. She fought that. You ask me that question, am I up to the challenge? With every ounce of my heart, I want to say yes. But the truth is, I'm afraid. Will my colleagues, my peers, will they support the mission to step up to that challenge? Do I want to put myself in that public eye?
They don't want.
Do I want to live in that fishbowl any more than I currently am? And I think while the story has been told, because there have been books written, Mama has a book written about her, I think what we can do is further his legacy through the goals and the pillars of Bahamian life that he has instilled. And that is through national service, that is through public service, that's through education, that's through healthcare, that's through access, that's through coming home and giving back through the fruits of your labor. And I think that is the route that our generation is more keen to deliver on. Whether that be on the political front line, I'm not sure. But it's challenging because I wish that we had her passion.
But what I'm hearing you say essentially is this, is that while you understand everything that they've done, and while you're grateful for everything they've done, it is very hard to put yourself back out on the firing line. And I can understand that because a lot of people would not appreciate the pain that many of us carry. You know, it's very difficult to overcome pain, and pain not just from a weapon,
Words.
from words.
And
That's probably sometimes more painful than than the weapons.
and growing up, you know, we were shielded from it, but there's only so much shielding that can be done. And people ask all the time, "Oh, what was that like growing up like that?" Or how did you deal with it? Deal with it? You just did.
Absolutely.
So how do we get a Pindling or a descendant of Dame Marguerite and Sir Lynden Pindling engaged once again and galvanized to carry forward those ideals that your grandfather fought for?
I think we're living it. Among us, there are chartered accountants, IT engineers, business analysts, compliance analysts, human resources specialists. We have a budding artist, coming up in our family, and we are representing that dream that he saw for these Bahamians. Yep. Are we going to spearhead that movement on a political line? I'll speak for myself and say maybe not. Yeah. I wouldn't say it's out of the window, and I don't know what Papa's thinking as I say that, but we're doing it. And
well, let me share something with you then, just to give you some inspiration.
Sure.
When I was young and in school, and I always was very vocal, and I don't think I've changed much. No, I was always told that I was going to get into politics. And I said, you've got to be crazy. Mm-hmm. You have got to be crazy. Obviously, I took a different route. Mm-hmm. And, it brought a lot of angst in some quarters. It brought a lot of ridicule in other areas. But the bottom line is I did take the plunge, even though I thought it was not my path.
At a cost.
And yes, at a great cost. But at the end of the day, I think the most gratifying thing is to actually get out there and do it.
Absolutely.
Because there are persons who are still waiting for others to do it.
Absolutely.
And we must be bold. Mm-hmm. We must be bold. We, not just as legacy families, but as women, as men, we must be bold, because the only way we're going to make our country, yes, we have all of these professions. Yeah. And, I'm a funeral director. Mm-hmm. That's my profession. Mm-hmm. But the reality is we all have the talent to leverage change on a national level. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to challenge you.
Keep speaking to Holly. I like
keep doing it.
I'm going to challenge you and your cousins and others that, people still look to us. Mm-hmm. People still look to us to make that change. Mm-hmm. It may not be you. Mm-hmm. But when you sit around on a Sunday afternoon, and you're talking, there is so much more that we can do. And it's not because you want to build a dynasty.
No.
It's because you actually have it in your genes.
This conversation is a start. This conversation is
I love it. I love it. I love it. So this is serving the purpose. This is serving the purpose.
I don't think enough people have the fire in the belly yet.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to put some fire in that belly, because let me tell you, I didn't have it either. But it grows, and it grows the more engaged you become. And sometimes it happens serendipitously. Mm-hmm.
And I would just add, Loretta knows this has been a 2-year and waiting project. Mm-hmm. I said, Loretta, we got to do something, man. I was pretty frustrated. Honestly, in our family, we had a buck of Milo. We couldn't agree on the editing.
Your mother's a fireball.
Exactly, right? So I'm like, what are we going to do with this thing? I'm like, Loretta's 50th anniversary is coming up. The deal was I would find a way to make it happen, but I ain't going to be no host. Mm-hmm. Boy, we asked family take forever to respond. Mm-hmm. Yeah. At the end of it, Holly, I came to the point, listen, Loretta called me, Christmas. Franklyn, we got to do this. It's the 50th anniversary. We got to get on with it. And I can tell you,
it's going over well.
Because I've been hosting this podcast with Loretta, I've learned so much about myself.
Yeah.
I had no idea. So, because when you hear the stories of somebody, you start saying to yourself, Jesus, boy, that's... Because you feel it, you feel something. You feel it. Mm-hmm. So when
you said it's a feeling.
Talk about the PLP being
a
feeling.
And
then a movement.
And you can spot them a mile away.
That's the point. So the point I'm making, Holly, is that continue to have the conversations. And that's really what we're hoping to do. That's why we didn't just want Lady Pindling. We wanted the next generation, because if we don't start to have the conversations at our level, we will never get the feeling.
First of all,
people don't know the story of Lady Pindling and what she went through and how Sir Milo sacrificed. And so I'm delighted to have you here, Lady Pindling, just to tell your story
And to give Holly the feeling.
Well, and give Holly the feeling.
And give Holly the feeling.
Because it gives context to so many of the big moments. Because we only hear the big moments. Majority rule. You only hear about independence. But you only hear about the struggle and how they beat on sudden recreational park and all that went on behind the scenes.
But we have to trust one another. That trust. In the early days, it was trust and love and loyalty.
Yep. Trust,
Love and loyalty. Can't beat it.
Yeah.
And if you can't trust them, if you're not loyal, then you know we had several things happened. I mean, in that road, to coming to becoming where we are today.
The road to 50.
Like I could tell them, boy, we may not be where we want to be, but we're not where we used to be.
That's right.
Amen.
And that is a beautiful, beautiful way we can think of it.
Praise
I just
the
want to touch a little bit on this whole thing about trust, love, and loyalty. It takes me back to one of our very early podcasts where we had one of the still living signatories to the Constitution, Loftus Roker. And, you know, he spoke to us about the financial challenges that, you know, the Black people would have had in trying to create what was then the PLP and everything. And one of the lessons that I took away, and you just echoed in that, was that they had to trust each other. They had to lean on each other and be loyal and supportive to each other. Whatever limited resources each one had, they had to go. They had to go and share
it.
And to make sure that the best results came out. And so, you know, that is important. I don't know that we love our brother that much today. No. I don't know that we love our sister that much today. But once again, I'm going to implore you as a legacy family to carry this conversation, to carry this feeling, to grow this fire in your belly, because we have 50 more years to go, and there's still some pillars to be built upon.
Praise the Lord.
And I would just go, and as we think about wrapping up, as we think about the next 50 years, what are your hopes, Lady Pindling, for the Bahamas? Holly, and perhaps even you, Loretta, might want to give your perspective on what are your hopes for the next 50 years.
Well, I just hope in the next 50 years we'd have a woman prime minister.
Amen.
All right.
I knew she would say that.
Because we know how to get the job done.
I agree with you.
And we could do it, right?
I fully agree. And we're going to be making sure that we build institutions where women can feel secure to go out there and pursue not just being the leader, but to be effective in their spheres so that they can become the national leader. And so, yes, they may very well be sitting here. Holly doesn't know what the future holds for her.
Politically.
And, pardon?
Politically.
No, you don't. You don't know what the future holds, whether it's politically or otherwise. But the reality is, if we could inspire some young women, you know, to realize that they can, in fact, not just be the supporting role,
But they could be the leaders.
absolutely.
And
Lady Pindling, I want you to continue that.
Before you go, and try to instill in our young people, you don't have to be a lawyer or a doctor. You can be the best carpenter. This is another thing that we need to talk about. There's trade, there's love, and there's what's that word? In hard work. There's nothing wrong with hard work. The sweat of your brow, the Bible tells you.
Integrity.
Bread.
Integrity. And
Our grandmother used to tell us all the time, and she would demonstrate it by the
sweat of your brow, you eat bread.
And that's the way they used to do it.
That's right.
You know, but I think a lot of people think that it's an easy road. It's not an easy road.
It's not an easy road.
And anything worth achieving
is worth fighting for.
It's worth fighting for.
Anything else you wish for the next 50 years, Lady Pindling, before I move on?
Just make sure that we have a woman prime minister.
A woman prime minister. And
so far, I can't think of anything else right now.
Okay, go ahead, Holly. And your thoughts? Any thoughts for the next 50 years?
So in the next 50 years, I would echo the sentiments that were shared in your previous episode on women in the Bahamas. I hope that we have equal rights for women as men in this country. I hope that we can eliminate all violence against women in this country and their associated court rulings. I hope that we can establish opportunities for young Bahamians to come home and have the opportunity to climb that ladder in their professional realms, in their industries. Economic growth growth for young people and appropriate compensation so that not only do they come home, but they want to come home and can make a difference in their communities. And I hope for mentorship. I think the problem that we have is that we're not bringing young people into the front line of politics with appropriate mentorship. I think people feel that this job is a selfish one, and it's a selfless one.
Absolutely.
And we need to teach young people that what we do is for country, as you said, and what we do is for our brother, for our sister. And in the next 50 years, I want to bottle that up, and I want to give that to every single person that we can. So
Beautiful.
Loretta, any thoughts for you? Next 50
Well,
years?
I can tell you, I think that one of the things that I would like to see happen is, and I think Holly spoke to it earlier, is ownership within our country.
Mm-hmm.
We've got to make sure that our people feel that the opportunity is there for them to own.
Mm-hmm.
In many instances, people feel that they're not able to own a piece of the dream, the Bahamian dream. They're not able to afford a piece of the land that our forebears fought for. So in order to attract the persons that probably feel there's no way to make it here, we've got to present opportunities to bring them back. And maybe in our national development evolution and our plan, we will create ways to ensure that Bahamians actually own the land.
And
Great.
that I could say, though, that in the next 50 years, I hope that we'd be able to experience some more love, peace and love among our people, and trust. I can't emphasize that word enough. And to go back to church, I think the problem lies in this country today because we have taken God out of the
everything.
picture because he was there in 67.
Absolutely.
And everything came together, and the love, we were able to feel the love and affection among our people. But today, we don't even know who our neighbors are.
So well said. On that note, Franklyn, I think that, I don't think we could have said it any
You
better.
couldn't say any better.
You
And so, Dame Marguerite, I want to again personally thank you on behalf of Loretta and I for joining us for this conversation. It has been incredible. Every time I leave these conversations, I feel uplifted because I know a little bit more about who I am, a little bit more about our national history. And to have you is just a joy. Thank you for your years of service. Thank you for the sacrifice you made on behalf of all of us Bahamian citizens and those who benefit from the Bahamas as a home, for just standing in the gap with Sir Lynden, Anne Samilo, and Lady Caroline, and those who've gone before. Holly, thank you for joining us as well. Very proud to see you prepared to step up and to be on this platform.
Thank
My
you.
hope for the next 50 years is there more platforms like this where we're not just telling our story, but people like you are telling your stories as well, because more of this needs to be told, or else we will not appreciate what the next 50 years. It'll be only about the material things and not about the lessons and the struggles and the indomitable spirit, as one former Prime Minister used to talk, because that's really the feeling that I think I hear Lady Dame Marguerite talk about.
I want to thank the Bahamian people for the love and support they have given my husband over the many years he spent trying to be a good prime minister for them in this country. He did his best. He made plenty of mistakes, but they were all in the best interests of the country and its people. He loved you then, and I know he loves you now in spirit, and I want you to continually pray for me that God will give me the strength and spare my life a couple more years. I got some more work to do,
Yeah,
Yes, ma'am.
according to Mr. Butler.
that's for sure.
And to thank again the Bahamian people for the love and the trust and the warmth they have shared with him, to him, through him, and now through me. I want to say thank you, and I love you.
Thank you.
Thank you for
Thank
the
you.
elegance, the grace, everything that you've brought along with you, the beauty, and that you're passing on to your generations and to us as Bahamians. Thank you very, very much. This has been an amazing exchange and discussion with you both today.
Thank you.
I'm sure that if nothing else, people are going to find the optics very pleasing because we've got two beautiful guests. And Franklyn, in closing, once again, I just would like to thank you for being an amazing co-host. And we'd like to thank the sponsors here at Bahamas
Yes.
and the Echo Gallery for sponsoring this podcast, along with the Butler Legacy Foundation. I'm just always delighted to be a part of this. Thank you very much.
I can't end this without thanking you, my dear cousin. I am nothing without you. Your
See
public
that?
life experience, my private life
He's
experience.
done this
is what-
before.
This is the magic. So I just want to thank you again for being a part of this. And to our listeners who continue to enjoy this podcast on YouTube, podcasts, Apple Podcasts, and of course Spotify, please join us. We have many great episodes to come, and we hope that you continue to enjoy these fantastic episodes where we get to tell the story of the Butler legacy and inspire other families like the Pindlings and others to tell their stories and continue to be an inspiration to all of us as Bahamians as we think about 50 years of independence.
Praise
Thank
the
you,
Lord. Praise the
and a
Lord.
great show.
God bless.
Thank you. God
Thank
bless you
you.
too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Happy Independence.